तुझं चालतं तुझं चालतं फॉर सम फक डॅड. तुझं पुन्हा हाल नका कसं तरी देव बरं चालतं आता चालून ते का चार्ज ना हा Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's weekend evening talk, which is on a legal perspective on linear infrastructure projects on forests in and around Molem. Today's talk will be by Sreeja. She will take us through all the legal aspects which are around this project, and all the questions she will take at the end of her talk. So it's a request to everyone, please put your questions in the comments so that Shrija can take them at the end of the talk. With this, I will leave the stream to Shrija for her to continue. Shrija, over to you.
Hi. Hi, everyone. So I'll start with a presentation. So I'll start first by explaining the forest clearance proposal stages. So when an user agency submits a forest clearance proposal, first it goes to the Deputy Conservator of Forest. In short, it's DCF. So he has the power to reject or recommend, and the primary function of the DCF is to go into the site and carry out a site inspection. And thereafter, he forwards his site inspection report to the Chief Conservator of Forest along with his recommendation and specific remarks. If the proposed forest land is prone to soil erosion or any wild animal that he has seen during his site visit. And thereafter, the chief conservator of forest, if the land falls in a wildlife area, then the chief conservator of forest, wildlife division, as well as the chief conservator of forest, conservation, both of them have to go to the site and inspect based on the previous inspection report of the deputy conservator of forest. Then, accordingly, with his recommendation and remarks, the proposal is submitted or forwarded to the APCCF for his further recommendation and remark. And here, the PCCF or APCCF, whatever may be the post, he in his recommendation has to cite the recommendation and specific observations made by the deputy conservator of forest and chief conservator of forest, and has to state the reasons as to why he thinks that the project should be recommended or rejected. Thereafter, this proposal along with the site inspection report is forwarded to the additional chief secretary, forest environment and ecology department. He also has to give a recommendation, or he may also reject it. Thereafter, the proposal in toto is forwarded to the regional office of MOEF. For Goa, it goes to the regional office in Bangalore. Now, this is a very important authority because this authority has the power to reject it or grant stage 1 clearance. Now, for all linear infrastructure project, stage 1 clearance means the working tree felling permission. Then I'll take you guys to the forms that each one that the officers of the forest department has to submit. So for wildlife clearances, part 1 and part 2 is filled and submitted by the user agency. Part 3 is after his site inspection, the recommendation is submitted by the deputy conservator of forest. Thereafter, part 4 recommendation comes from the PCCF and the chief wildlife warden. Therefore, for part 5 recommendation, it goes to the state board for wildlife, and part 6 recommendation comes from the standing committee of National Board for Wildlife. Similarly, in case of forest clearance, the user agency who is applying for a forest clearance for the first time submits Form A, and there are 4 parts to a forest clearance proposal. Part 1 is filled by the user agency with providing information such as the total forest area required, the land he has acquired for compensatory afforestation, if the project is located to the if the project is located inside a protected area, or how much of distance is there from the forest to the wildlife area. Then part 2 is by the deputy conservator of forest. After his site inspection, he has to put in his specific recommendation in part 2. Thereafter, the conservator of forest, wildlife division. In case of Goa, the post is conservator of forest, wildlife and ecotourism, and wildlife and conservator of forest, forest conservation. So both of their recommendation and site inspections comes under part 3. And part 4 comes from the nodal officer, who in all probability are the principal chief conservator of forest, head of forest force. Now in part 2, DCF has a very important role to play. He is the authority who goes on the site and does a tree enumeration. That also is submitted along with part 2. Now let's come to the 3 specific projects that are there in question. First, I'll start with the National Highway project. So the National Highway project in Goa is approximately 69 kilometers. The chainage starts at 84 kilometer and ends at 153 kilometer. The total forest land involved for the highway expansion project is 63.615 hectares and involves felling of 20,199 trees. So now I'll take you to the details and the merits of the forest diversion proposals that has been submitted for the National Highway 4A. Now, as you can see, that there are two forest diversion proposals submitted by the user agency, who is the Public Works Department. The first one is for 32.085 hectares. So this is the forest area which is inside the national park. Now the division is like this. 24.265 hectares is inside the national park and 6.75 hectares is inside the wildlife sanctuary, and the remaining 1.07 hectares is forest outside the protected area, right? Then if one has to look at the part 3 filled up by the deputy conservator of forest, right? So he claims that he has inspected the entire 32.085 hectares for which the diversion has been sought by the Public Work Department. Now, it is very important to understand how much of an area is 32.085. So, it's approximately 60 football fields. And the inspection that he carried out was on 19th February 2020. Now, it is very difficult to believe that a man on foot on one specific day has been able to cover 60 football field worth of land, and then he has given his recommendation, remarks, or whatever. Now, if you look, so as you can see that there are two forest diversion proposals. So when you go into the specific forms that I had already mentioned, you will see that there is not even one mention about the entire area of forest that is required. Then suddenly, in the part 4, where the PCCF has to give his recommendation, he finally admits that the entire area required for the project is 63.615 hectare. So this is the only example or the only instance where anybody from the forest department has accepted that the entire forest land involved for the National Highway expansion project is actually 63.615 hectares. But again, there is no mention or any questioning to the project proponent as to why it is divided, or even any justification from their side that why they have processed both of the proposals individually. Then let's come back to part 3, where the Deputy Conservator of Forest has to put in his recommendation. So there are certain conditions that he has put in his recommendation. So as you can see, condition number 5, for the safety of wildlife and education of commuters on animal movements, 100 wildlife crossing signage be installed by user agency along the proposed highway. Then he makes a very interesting, he has put a very interesting condition for him to grant recommendation to the user agency. Now, here it is. In order to better equip the Executive Forest Protection staff of Kolem and Ponda Range for forest and wildlife management activities in the proposed diversion forest area, the user agency shall provide 2 four-wheelers or four-wheel drive and 5 motorcycles. Now, if anybody has gone through the Forest Conservation Act or the handbook or the guidelines, so, or by a mere common sense, a person can say that this can't be a condition given by a deputy conservator of forest, which has got nothing to do in promotion of forest conservation, right? So in a way, it's a bribe that he asking. So I will give you my part of recommendation and remark. And if in case, if you fulfill the condition that I am putting forward, that you have to give us 2 four-wheel drives car and 5 motorcycles. Now, now let me remind you that the Deputy Conservator of Forest North Goa Division has only inspected the area inside the national park, which is 31 hectares, right? Then, so when I was going through the proposals, there was one. So he claims that he has inspected 30 hectares, but the reality is something very different. So what he has inspected is he has only inspected 11.10 hectares. And when the same question was raised in the meeting of the State Board for Wildlife, the user agency informed that out of the 31.015 hectares, only 11.10 hectare is required for permanent diversion and balance 19.915 hectares is required for temporary diversion for making 18-meter temporary road for the movement of material and machinery at foot of the hill. Now, the number of trees that they say will be felled and the enumeration that has been done is only of 12,097 trees. Now they are clearly accepting that they have inspected and considered only 11.10 hectares, since this is the actual forest area which would be diverted permanently. Now the question arises that the trees that are enumerated, 12,097, do they fall within this 11.10 hectares specifically, or the trees are also for the trees for the entire area of 31.015 hectares? Now the problem that will arise is that the land that they claim will be used temporarily, which is 19.915 hectares, they say that there has to be a 18-meter temporary road made. Then there will be movement of machineries and materials on foot. Now, if there is any tree cutting that they have done, nobody can actually go on the site, inspect and say that this is the tree that was out of the enumeration, right? So what they will do in the remaining 19.915 hectares, which they say they will use for a period of 3 years. So there will be a practically no vigilance, nothing, no examination. What is happening there? Even if the trees are felled, a normal citizen is not in a position to get hold of them or held them liable. Then let's come to what have they done with regard to the compensatory afforestation. So this applies to all the three projects, the road, rail, and the transmission line. So in the forest diversion proposals, as you can see, that the section which is for compensatory afforestation is completely blank. Yeah, so there is no details, nothing like where they are going to carry out the compensatory afforestation, how much of money have they deposited, what is the area, are they going to carry out compensatory afforestation in Goa or in Karnataka, because as per 2013 Forest Survey report, Goa has more than 33% of forest cover. Now, there is a notification from MOEF which allows states having more than 33% forest cover with a certificate signed by the Chief Secretary of the state to carry out compensatory afforestation in the neighboring state. So that's the law, but there is no mention. And upon perusal of all the proposals, it is impossible for anyone to gauge that what they are planning or what they will do with regard to the compensatory afforestation. Now let's go and look at what they have done with the railway line project. So the total forest land required for the railway project is 138.39 hectares. Out of the 138.39 hectares, the forest land that is there inside the protected area is 128.27 hectares. The total number of trees that has to be chopped for this project is 22,882. Now again, this is the window from the Parivesh website where it can be clearly seen that there are three proposals. Three proposals for 138 hectare, right? So they have bifurcated the proposal again. One is for 15.6, another is for 120.875, another is 1.9. Then let's come to the transmission line project. The total forest land required for the transmission line project is 48.855 hectares, out of which protected area forest land is 11.54 and non-protected area is 37.315. The total number of trees that has to be chopped is 16,027 along with 985 cane clumps. Now again, for this project, two proposals have been submitted. The one that is here, 48.3, is actually for the main project, main transmission line project. And the other one, which is for 0.55 hectares, is for construction of an approach road. Now, if you go and look into the proposals, you will see that they say that the substation for the power line is included in this proposal, in the 48.3. But if you look at the cost of the project, you will see that the cost of the project involving merely 0.55 hectares is more than implementing the project on 48.3 hectares. Now, what they have done is, here in the 48.3 hectares, they claim that they are going to construct the substation, or the substation is part and parcel of the main project. But when you look at the financials, you can find out that the substation is very much part of the second proposal, which is 0.55 hectares. Now, stage 1 forest clearance has already been granted for this project for the 0.55 hectares for the construction of the approach road, and blatant violations have already been committed. Now, this is a Google Earth image, and I have downloaded the KML files from the proposals. So this is the alignment of the transmission line. This is the national highway. This is the alignment. The red one is the existing. The one that is there in green is the area that is required to expand the highway. Now this over here was supposed to be the alignment for the approach road, for which the forest clearance have been granted. Now, in the recommendation, the forest department says that they have considered two more alternatives, which was somewhere here and here. Okay. And the reason that they have approved this alignment is because it involves the least amount of forest land, and it is very, very site specific. Now, the land that falls, the survey numbers that are there in this alignment are 21/2 and 27. So it is a very site-specific project as per the project documents. But what has happened is the cutting has started here. Now this area was always clear, and there was no vegetation or tree cover for many, many years. Now people who have gone to the site, the location, they have sent this latitude and longitude based on which I have marked. So clearly they have deviated from their original plan and they have moved further. They have not carried out the project either in alternate 1, 2 or 3. Rather, they have gone and chosen a different alignment altogether. Now this is the actual felling that has taken place. So it was supposed to be on survey number 27, and some part of it was supposed to be on survey number 21. But they have gone into this survey numbers. Now this is the recommendation that is coming from the Principal Chief Conservator of Forest. He recommends by saying diversion of 0.55 hectares of forest land falling in survey number 27 and 21/2. So the project was supposed to be undertaken only in survey number 27 and 21 by 2, nowhere else. Now, he says he is recommending considering the essential public utility of the project and non-availability of any alternative land. So again, he confirms that the project is site specific and there was no alternative, hence the chosen alignment has been recommended. But we have seen that that is not the case, because this is the chosen alignment, but the felling has happened in a different alignment altogether. Now, this is the actual image of what kind of felling has actually happened. So I don't have a better image which can show, but as per information provided by people who have been on the site, they say that it's firstly absolutely more than 0.55 hectares and somewhere between 6 to 7 hectares. Now, the permission that was granted to divert that 0.55 hectares of forest was only to fell 255 trees. But the image here shows the stack of wood, which is certainly more than 255 trees, right? Now, it is very important to highlight over here that for these 255 trees, the net present value of these trees are paid by the user agency, the power company, to the forest department. Now, if it was done legally, then this 255 trees were supposed to be sold by the forest department, and whatever revenue were to come, that were to be there with the forest department itself. Now, since everything has gone wrong and this is an illegal tree cutting and forest diversion that has taken place, the most important question to ask is, whose property are these logs, like the stacked logs over here? Are they going to be sold by the power company, or the forest department is selling them? And since there is no account of the since there is no account of how much of money they can earn and what they are going to do, so there is completely gray area. Nobody knows for sure that where the money will go and what will they do with the money and whom are they selling these logs. Nothing. Now let's come to the compensatory afforestation. Now, compensatory afforestation is one of the most important requirement, or the most important condition for prior approval of the central government for diversion of forest land for non-forest purposes. And the purposes of compensatory afforestation, like what is the main purpose and object of compensatory afforestation, is to compensate the loss of land by land to loss of trees by trees. Now, any proposal submitted by the state seeking prior approval of the central government under the Forest Conservation Act shall have a comprehensive scheme for compensatory afforestation duly approved by the competent authority of the concerned state. Now, I have already shown that the proposals, the 7 proposals that are there, nobody mentions anything about compensatory afforestation, and nothing is on record or any undertaking as such as required under the law as to where the compensatory afforestation is going to take place. Now, these are the certain conditions that are there that the deputy conservator of forest has to ensure when he receives a forest diversion proposal, goes into the site, and all of this, like the details of the non-forest area, degraded forest area, identified for compensatory afforestation, its distance from adjoining forest, number of patches, size of each patch. Then he has to upload a map showing the non-forest, degraded forest area identified for compensatory afforestation, detailed compensatory afforestation scheme including species to be planted, implementing agency, time schedule, cost structure, total financial outlay for compensatory afforestation scheme, certificates. None of them are there, but ideally this is the law and this is the procedure that ought to have been followed. But in case of all the 7 proposals for the 3 projects, nothing of this is there. Now, compensatory afforestation gets more strict when it comes to linear infrastructure projects. So this is from the guidelines of the Forest Conservation Act. So this is para 2.5, which lays out the special provisions for compensatory afforestation for certain categories of projects. Now, compensatory afforestation for linear infrastructure project has to be raised and maintained at the cost of the user agency on degraded forest land twice in extent of the forest area diverted in the cases of laying of transmission line, then diversion of linear, rail, road, all of this. So all these three projects attract this provision. Now the total area, as I already mentioned, is 250 hectares of forest. So the compensatory afforestation should ideally take place in a degraded forest land, which is twice 250 hectares. So in total, they have to carry out compensatory afforestation in 500 hectares of land. So it's a huge piece of land, right? But we do not have any information on that. Then again, this is one of the screenshots from one of the proposals. As you can see, the maps, there's this icon for the maps, but the maps are not there. So if you click on them, it's an empty box that appears. So there's no information whatsoever. Now I want to draw everyone's attention to the recent order that was passed by the Manipur High Court on 11th June. So the High Court clearly states that the compensatory afforestation was brought in by the Supreme Court of India in T.N. Godavarman case. And thereafter, 47436.18 crore rupees has been released to 27 states for compensatory afforestation. So this case was in relation to Manipur. So they have stated how much of money exactly the state has got from the Central Compensatory Afforestation Fund. Then the court makes a very interesting observation, which is very relevant to the present situation that we are in. Further, while announcing the stimulus package in May 2020 for combating the impact of COVID-19 on the economy, the Honorable Finance Minister has earmarked a further sum of rupees 6,000 crores from out of CAMPA funds for creating job opportunities in rural and semi-urban areas. Thus, there is no dearth of funds for carrying on afforestation activity. It would appear that there is probably a further sum of 50,000 crore to be put to good use. The need of the hour is to only formulate appropriate scheme and to spend the fund raised till now and those that will come in its kitty in future in a judicious manner to achieve the forest cover of 33%. So now the 33% forest cover was a goal that was set by the National Forest Policy, as per the National Forest Policy of 1988. Now let's come to the performance of the state of Goa with regard to compensatory afforestation. Now this is an extract from the Auditor General's report of 2013. So they had done an audit of the compensatory afforestation fund and has done a compliance study of the status of compensatory afforestation in the state of Goa. Like they have done it for the whole of the country, but this is specific to the state of Goa. And this was prepared based on the Forest Department data from 2009 to 2012. And the same was cross-checked with the data that is there with the regional forest, with the regional office of MOEF in Bangalore. Now, let's see what are the observations by the Auditor General. CAMPA funds should not be used for creating infrastructure at the state forest headquarters and ecotourism. However, test check revealed that expenditure was incurred on purchase of executive table, vehicles, computer, laptops, etc. Ministry stated in April 2013 that vehicles, computers, small furniture, etc. were purchased for the maintenance of records and protection of forest, and these items were purchased by the head office and then distributed to the subordinate offices. So the Auditor General himself records this reply of the ministry is not tenable as purchases of this item were not covered under the state CAMPA guidelines. So this is a complete illegality that they have done. Like they have illegally spent money from the Campa funds to other uses, but has done nothing for compensatory afforestation. Now it goes on to the performance of the state in with regard to compensatory afforestation. So they tested records of 19 sites of plantation under state Campa, revealed the following deficiencies. First, plantations were carried out in area with existing plantation and some in areas surrounded with dense vegetation. The area of plantation seemed to already have a density of 0.40 and above. So we have already seen that the whole rationale of carrying out compensatory afforestation is to replace trees with trees, forest land with forest land, and with respect to linear infrastructure project, the scrutiny of law is even more stricter, where they say that they have to carry out compensatory afforestation twice the amount of land that they have diverted for the project. So this is the performance. Second, plantation register did not contain the reason for selecting the area for plantation. First is they've carried out a plantation where the law does not allow them to carry out because it makes no sense. Secondly, there was no register, nothing, unaccountable. Density of the area of plantation had not been mentioned in the plantation register against any of the plantation. Plantations had been carried out in places with already existing acacia and eucalyptus, again, with monoculture plant. This criteria itself is illegal because compensatory afforestation has to be done only with native species and forestry species. There is no scope for them, for the forest department, to carry out compensatory afforestation with monoculture species. Then the plantations were to be carried out in degraded forest land, as I said while explaining the first point, and not in areas with high density of forest with fully grown mature trees. However, in none of the areas selected, this criteria was followed. So this report had come when the linear infrastructure projects in Goa was not a thing. So the linear infrastructure projects in Goa started coming up since 2015. So the performance of the forest department with regard to the linear infrastructure project specifically is not yet, we do not have the data. So this is more or less with regard to mining and other infrastructure projects, but not linear infrastructure projects. So now, on perusal of the final recommendations by the chief wildlife warden, by the who is also the principal chief conservator of forest, head of forest force, and the minutes of the state board for wildlife, they say that 3% of the project cost individually, like 3% of the project cost of the National Highway 4A, 3% of the project cost for the railway line, 3% of the project cost for the transmission line, has to be deposited with the forest department and can be only used for eco restoration, prey augmentation, reducing public dependence on forest, and promoting traditional livelihood in and around the PAs. So now this is the exact figure, that how much is 3% of the entire project cost. Now again, there is a twist over here. These conditions were laid in the wildlife clearance. And as you have seen that there are several forest clearances proposal, and the project cost is actually much more. So the calculation that I could do is only with regard to the project cost that will be inside the protected areas. So for the National Highway 4A, the Forest Department gets 53.82 crores. For the railway line, they get 8.91 crores. And for the transmission line, they get 16.758 lakhs. So a total amount of 62.89 crores is going to be deposited with the Forest Department for the purposes of eco restoration, prey augmentation, reducing public dependence on forest, and promoting traditional livelihoods. Now, again, there is nothing on record, or there is no plan, nothing with regard to what the forest department's plans are in utilizing the 62.89 crores that they will gain from the three projects. Now let's sum it up, like how much of money and what all benefits are the forest department getting. So as we have already seen that from National Highway 4A, a condition to the forest clearance is that the project proponent, who is the PWD, has to give them 2 SUVs and 5 motorcycles, and then they get 62.89 crore rupees as well. Okay, so they are rich. Now let's come to the cumulative impact assessment. Now, one thing has to be addressed and understood, that why has why has the project proponents for all the three projects have bifurcated the forest land, and also the forest department has processed it in a very piecemeal manner. And if you look at the recommendations across the department, you will see that every officer says that I am recommending the project because for the highway and for the railway line there cannot be alternatives because it's a site specific project. So alternatives have not been considered, and if a new alignment has to be constructed, then a larger amount of forest land would go. So it only makes sense that the the expansion is taken along the lines of the existing alignment. Now, again, for national highway, there are two proposals. For the railways, there are three proposals. So the alternatives that they have considered is only for the transmission line. And for the minimum amount of forest land that they got permission to do any kind of work, they have violated. So their basic line of argument is, first is that the project land is very small. Yes, of course, very small, because you have bifurcated the entire 250.86 hectares into several proposals, and then they say that we are recommending because it's site specific. It is of utmost public importance, national interest, that this project has to come through. Now, there is not even a mention that what is the amount of traffic that is currently plying on the national highway, how many trains are plying, how many passengers trains, how many freight trains, nothing. There is no information whatsoever. They say that the national highway is required all the more because there's so much of traffic congestion and noise pollution, air pollution, and they are projecting that the traffic congestion will only increase day by day, but there is no amount of how much of traffic is actually plying. And they have gone on to say in the wildlife proposals that right now the traffic congestion is such that the wild animals are not being able to cross. But after the expansion with our highly scientific underpasses and overpasses, where the science itself is missing, that the wild animals can now cross and go and go from this side to that side. Actually, the expansion will help them. Right now, the congestion is stopping them. So the total area is 250 hectares. The total forest land required in the protected areas is 170.83 hectares. Total number of trees that are to be felled inside the protected area. Protected area in this case means the wildlife sanctuary and the national park is a total of 36,000. And the total cost of the three projects. Now, this cost is inclusive of everything. Like I've calculated the cost from each of the seven proposals, and it comes to a sum of 2,474.806 crores. Now, this is how it is going to be. This is how it looks like, this project. Like, see how the bifurcation is. Like, this is the national highway. The transmission lines are here. Then the railway is here. So it's a complete fragmentation. So now National Tiger Conservation Authority has been saying from 2011 that this is a very important corridor for the tigers, and they have gone on to state that this area bordering the state of Maharashtra and Karnataka has been studied and found out to be a breeding place for the tigers. And also, further down this area, which is contiguous with the Anshi Dandeli Tiger Reserve, also known as the Kali Tiger Reserve, is also a breeding area for the tigers. Now, a tiger, when it reaches its sub-adult stage, which is approximately 1 year, 8 months, or 2 months, when it comes to that age, a male tiger, a male tiger ventures into the other forest area looking for his own territory. Now, a single male tiger's area can be as big as 200 square kilometers. So there is a lot of recent instances where tigers have been seen inside the protected area network of Goa. And the forest department, it appears that it is the benefit of the forest department to immediately declare them as migrant. And uh, they always fail to accept the fact that the tigers are actually breeding in Goa. And whenever a tiger is spotted or killed, it's the case that it has always come from Karnataka as a migrant. So to sum it up, the situation that I have explained is not very great. So we have clearly seen that the conservation spirit as envisaged under the Forest Conservation Act is missing. There is no conservation, it's only destruction. Even there is no attempt to mitigate that destruction. There is nothing that we can see where they're going to do the compensatory afforestation and all. Now there is another dangerous notification that has come from the Ministry of Environment few years back, which allows states having forest cover more than 33% to carry out compensatory afforestation in their neighboring state. So nothing's, and Goa has a forest cover of approximately 37% of the total forest area, out of which 31% is government forest land, and 5.4% is private forest land. So the forest area in Goa is clearly more than 33%. Now, what do we do? How do we address this situation? It doesn't look very good. So the first thing that people can do is that they can write representation letters to the regional office of MOEF. Now, regional office of MOEF is a quasi-judicial body. It has all the powers to reject or recommend a forest clearance. And even after recommending a forest clearance, it is the authority that ensures that all the conditions that are there in the forest clearance are complied. They ask a compliance report from the forest department from time to time. Usually it's 6 months, but it depends. They can even ask on a daily, monthly basis, in a quarterly basis. But as a mandate, every 6 months, the compliance report has to be submitted as to if the already granted forest clearance conditions are complied or not. So this is one of the most important authority with regard to forest clearance for linear infrastructure projects. So citizens can write specific representations to the regional office of MOEF, and one has to remember that all is still not lost. So a lot can be done. Out of the 7 forest clearance proposals, only the smallest one has been granted forest clearance, and even that clearance is violated. Now, this has to be brought to the notice of the regional office of MOEF. And also, you have to understand that when regional office of MOEF is processing all these 7 forest diversion proposals, they are not sitting on it, or they are not deliberating on it in one meeting. It may be spread across 1 year, 1.5 years. So even they are losing count that how much is the total forest land involved for these 3 projects. So this is a very important thing that the citizen should bring in front of the regional office, that you may be deliberating on the individual clearances, but the total clearance is for so much amount of land and so much of tree felling is involved. And also, the violation that has been done by the power company, so they have another proposal pending, right, for the main project, which is 48.3 hectares. Now when the regional office processes the other forest clearance, there is a place, and there is a mandate under the law that they have to take into account if the proponent has committed any past violations or not. So before they can deliberate on the bigger piece of land that the power company needs for the entire project. First, they have to be penalized for the violations, and their second proposal has to be processed keeping in mind with the specific observation that they are a violator. Then the functioning of the forest department with regard to processing the forest clearance proposal has also been laid out through my presentation. And more or less everybody has understood that the forest department is in a gain situation with car, motorbikes, refreshments, laptop, computers, and a lot of money in their bank. So people should really start taking up the issue with the forest department now. And since there is a complete darkness with regard to the compensatory afforestation, so RTIs should be so information on the compensatory afforestation through RTIs should be sought. Now, what what have been done? What all initiatives have been taken so far with regard to the Save Mole movement? So, scientists have sent out representations on the eve of World Environment Day. Small businessmen have written to the authorities about the project. Goa tourism operators have written to the authorities. A letter is underway, red letter representation on behalf of the lawyers, on behalf of the medical students, and even the movement has gained a lot of significance that led to the ex environment minister of the country tweeting and extending his support towards the movement. Now that is it from my side. I hope I was not too fast. So Pronoy, I think we can take up the questions now. Hi Pronoy, can you hear me? I can see one question. Many illegalities done here. Also, has anybody identified the trees and vegetations that were felled and removed from these sites, so that when replacing this, they will be able to do with the correct ones? No, this has not been done. This has completely not been done because the actual number of trees that were to be felled was 255 from a different
Yeah,
area.
Sreeja, I have put the question on your
Yeah,
screen
yeah.
if you can read it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the first question that has come is that many illegalities have been done here. Also, has anybody identified the trees and vegetation that were felled and removed from these sites? So that when replacing these, they would be able to with the correct ones. Now, the tree felling has only happened in one of the sites, that is with regard to the approach road to the substation. For the other ones, they do not have the permission to do anything. And no, nothing has been identified, as I already mentioned, that nobody knows that who is going to sell those logs, who is going to take that money, and what they're going to do with it. So no. Second question, please, Pranay. Can you hear me? So I have the next question. Hi, how can the local farmers of Molem play a role in this? Absolutely, they have a role to play. So there is a lot of non-forest land that is also going for the projects. I have only spoken about the forest land. So I am not well aware about how much of farmland is going to go for the projects. So if it is the case that a lot of farmers are losing land, then they have to take up the matter with the authorities on the similar lines that the representations are now being sent. And if it's the case that a lot of forest land is going, then that has still not come up. Like there is no mention in the media reports, or nobody is actually talking about it, so that needs to be highlighted. It's a very important aspect as well. But I yet currently I do not have the numbers with me. So if anybody can help me, then surely I can help draft a letter on behalf of the farmers as well. Okay, so I have another question. Do we have to wait for the regional office and then go to court? What is the procedure? Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, going to the courts right now is not a very good idea. There is no cause of action for the seven forest diversion proposals. For the six forest diversion proposal out of the seven. Uh, Whatever grievances are there, it only makes sense to put in all of them in the form of representation and pursue this with the regional office, because I think I forgot to mention that six of the proposals are have been sent by the regional office of MOEF back to the forest department and subsequently back to the user agencies now with specific queries, but those queries are not there in the public domain, and RTIs have been filed to seek information as to what specific information and what discrepancies the regional office has found in the proposals, and what is the reason for them to send them back for further deliberation or questions maybe. So going to the court is not an option right now. And even if we have to go to the court as as a last measure, then all of this representation the impression that we create in front of the courts are that the citizens have practically exhausted all of their rights, all of their resources, and nothing has come out of it, and like finally they have come before the court for the redressal. Okay. Can we organize a protest at the site? It is advisable not to protest at the site, given the growing number of COVID cases in Goa and across the country. But the momentum and the protest momentum across the social media is pretty strong, and people are taking notes. So I understand that a lot of people feel that they can participate or be part of this or show their dissent to the project by way of protest in the site. But there are many other ways of protesting as well, especially with the electronic medium. So it might not be the best thing to do to go to the site. Yeah, very good question. How can this happen on protected land? Now, last week, Anamika has already mentioned that nothing which is against the wildlife protection spirit can actually take place in protected land, and there has to be exceptional circumstances. There are several MOEF notification that says that projects through protected areas has to be avoided at all cost. But here is a project which the railway and the road are the projects which were already there, and now they want to expand. And everybody is in darkness about why this road and the rail has to be expanded apart from the quote unquote reason of public interest. There is no figure, there is no numbers, there is no data that is been shown to us. So yes, nothing of this sort can actually happen in the protected land, but national interest is a big criteria. So yeah, in the name of national interest, protections are removed. Yes, Gitanjali, there are certain forest right claims for which all the FRA claims seems to have been settled on papers. The real situation is not known. But yes, on papers they have settled. Next question is how we can highlight the violation of law during deforestation for one project to MOEF. Sorry, how can we highlight the violation of law during deforestation for one project to MOEF or Goa Forest Department? Actually, it has to be highlighted to both the authorities actually. To MOEF, of course, because MOEF is the one who has granted them forest clearance. It is the MOEF's duty to ensure that the conditions are complied. And to the forest department, because see, even if MOEF grants, MOEF is a central government body, right? Now, even if a central government body, in principle or on paper, agrees to forest clearance, nothing on the forest land can actually happen unless the state government issues a letter under Section 2 of the Forest Conservation Act. Okay. So, not even a branch can be chopped unless a letter to that effect has been issued by the Goa Forest Department under Section 2. So both of them has to be, the matter has to be pursued with both of them parallelly, and both of them have equal role to play. And it is very important and interesting to know the views of the Goa Forest Department. Like, they are the ones who have done the site inspection, they are the ones who have enumerated the trees, and how has this huge deforestation violation has gone unnoticed, and there is no statement from the Goa Forest Department whatsoever. The next question is, stay orders for this project can only happen after MOEF report. So no. See, stay order can only come for the violation case, which is for the approach road involving 0.55 hectares of forest. Now, as per the information that I have received, is that uh, the tree felling that was supposed to happen has already happened. So they have done what they wanted to do, and they are not carrying any further tree felling over there. So the question of stay order is not very relevant. The next question is NBWL is also letting this deforestation happen. Thoughts on this? So NBWL has practically no role to play when it comes to deforestation. It is completely in the hands of the State Forest Department. NBWL is only a recommending body for wildlife clearance. That's all. NBW doesn't have much role to play when it comes to forest conservation. Yeah, thank you everyone.